Okay, y'all. I'm here to explain something in this video. Something that's pretty obvious, but I'm just saying it for the people who may not get it. Mainly Zoro fans. Now, let me say this, before I start. Zoro's a strong character, powerful. He's even reliable. He's the most loyal Straw Hat in the crew. I have to stop y'all real quick. This video is called The Gap Between Luffy and Zoro is greater than the gap between Naruto and Sasuke. So let me go into that real quick. Let me talk about Naruto and Sasuke first so we understand some things. Naruto and Sasuke were always about neck and neck. Now, at first, Sasuke had the upper hand. He was being trained by his brother. He was being trained by his brother a little bit from a young age, and then like when he went to classes, he was trying to, be like his brother. You know how his brother was a prodigy. He had that to like push him to like do better. And then when his clan got killed, he went even harder, and he was doing that, and that was motivating him. Naruto was acting out, not really putting in the work too much. Not at first when he was a little boy, right? They got on team. Naruto started, doing his thing. Sasuke started doing his thing. Nine Tails chakra leaked out for Naruto. That put him, on par with Sasuke, right? Sasuke awakened the Sharingan. He also got amps from Orochimaru. Part 1, Sasuke beat Naruto. However, understand this. That win was not easily given to Sasuke. That was extreme diff. We ain't gonna actually sit here and act like it was easy. Now, when they come off of the time skip, 2.5 years pass. Sasuke trained under Orochimaru, right? He was stronger than Naruto. He could have killed everybody there. Like, that's not a fucking lie. When they got to Orochimaru's hideout and all that, right? He was basically at that point, he could have beat Naruto high difficulty. Not extreme difficulty, but high difficulty. Still, Naruto's still kind of there because of his Kurama chakra. And we know that when people write these stories, the mangas write these stories, the MC's usually gonna, still have some kind of, power within them to like, keep them in the fight. They were never like, and then later on, right? Sasuke fights Itachi, Naruto fights Pain. They both get stronger. Now at that point, Naruto actually did surpass Sasuke because he underwent sagehood. He went into sagehood and he acquired sage mode, right? That actually put him over Sasuke. But he was still close. Basically, in that exchange, Naruto would have the upper hand. Just slightly. Still just slightly, man. Not by a lot. He ain't just gonna walk in there and slap Sasuke one time and, he's done, right? They're gonna still be at a close fight. Close fight. Always a close fight. No matter what. No matter what point in time in the series, it's going to be a close fight for the most part between Naruto and Sasuke. I like to say this: if Naruto's a 98, then Sasuke's a 97.8. You know, and like sometimes a weaker character can beat a stronger character. Depending on the situation. But typically Naruto wins, but it's always an extreme difficulty type of battle. Now let's go hop over to One Piece. In One Piece, it's not like that. The protagonist, deuteragonist, dynamic, as far as power scaling goes, strength, speed, and all that shit goes. Luffy and Zoro, at the beginning of One Piece, Zoro had the best chance of beating Luffy then. If he wanted to, like, turn on Luffy as soon as he freed him from, Captain Morgan, he could have actually beat Luffy. He actually could have beat him. Like, he could have. But that day he decided to fucking, join Luffy's crew. Luffy grew, like they both started growing, right? So they went into, Arlong Park later on, and Zoro was injured, so we can't, say. But I believe Zoro, he probably could have beat Arlong, but, it would have been tougher for him, right? Where Luffy, beat him, mid difficulty, right? We'll say mid to high difficulty because he got bit, and blood loss is a thing. They move into Alabasta. You know, Zoro beats Mr. One, but it took everything he had. Luffy would have beat Mr. One ass down, right? You know, fighting Crocodile, fuck no. He could barely beat Mr. One. And Logia types, you need hockey to do that. You don't have hockey. No, Luffy don't either. But Luffy's, also more creative too. He figured out how to, get that. Now he needed 3 tries, but he fucking got it on the third try, right? And then Eneru, you know, this whole time they didn't really power up. They got stronger, faster, adapting a little bit, but they didn't actually gain abilities till CP9 showed up in the world government. That's when Zoro had to lock in. He unleashed Demon Aura Nine Sword style, right? Luffy had second gear, third gear in his bag. That was enough to defeat Rob Lucci. Rob Lucci at that point in time when the Strides were still coming up. He could have killed everybody. Like, he wasn't lying when he told Luffy he was going to kill everybody in the fucking Strides. If he can't beat him, then he was going to kill everybody there. And he was going to. Zoro couldn't do shit about it. Not back then, right? Luffy was basically already beating Zoro high difficulty by that point in time. By Eni's lobby. If they were to fight for whatever reason and Zoro wanted to leave the crew at that point in time, Luffy would have beat Zoro's ass high difficulty. Not extreme difficulty, high difficulty. Now we get into later, right? They get sent away and all that. Now 2 years pass. Zoro got hockey now. He has armament hockey and a little bit of observation hockey. No advanced forms, just the basic forms. Luffy has the basic forms too, but he's actually knowing that he's using Conqueror's hockey when he's using it. He knocked out 50,000 fishmen. He's doing that shit with Conqueror's hockey. Conqueror's hockey, and somebody who knows how to use it and isn't old. That shit's dangerous, right? Zoro don't got that yet. He ain't at that point yet. So Luffy's beating Zoro, mid to high diff, or we'll say high difficulty there. All right. Because Zoro's opponents didn't require him to like really pull out the big guns yet. But once we get to Dressrosa, that's when they actually like can't fucking play games anymore. Luffy fighting against Doflamingo isn't Zoro fighting against Doflamingo. Let's put Zoro in Luffy's position, right? That version of Zoro is not gonna beat Doflamingo. He's gonna get, mid to high diff by Doflamingo. Luffy took Doflamingo to extreme difficulty. I'm telling you right now, that Gear 4 Luffy versus that Zoro. Oh man, Luffy's beating that Zoro mid to high difficulty. Using Bounce Man Gear 4 against that version of Zoro. We get to Whole Cake Island. He learns more applications of the Gear 4, getting closer to his Devil Fruit Awakening, but not quite there yet. Zoro versus Katakuri. Sorry, but Zoro, he ain't beating Katakuri. Luffy took Katakuri to extreme diff. Then we get to Wano, and this is where the gap widens. Because Zoro did awaken Conqueror's Haki, but he doesn't even know. Even then, y'all, he does not know he has Conqueror's Haki. Luffy knows he has it. He knows advanced forms of it now. He knows advanced forms of armament Haki. Zoro knows advanced forms of not Conqueror Haki, but armament Haki. Luffy knows future sight too. He has all of that right now, right? And he needs that to fight against Kaido. If Zoro had to fight against Kaido, it would be a mid-difficulty fight for Kaido. Luffy took him to extreme difficulty. Basically, what I'm saying is Luffy with his full power, and then Zoro with his full power. We can say this, right? If Luffy's a 98, then Zoro is a 95.8 or 95.9. The gap between Luffy and Zoro is wider than the gap between Naruto and Sasuke. Now at the end of One Piece, who knows? They might get closer to each other. I'd say probably like, but I'd probably still say that Naruto and Sasuke are like really close. You know, basically a fight between Naruto and Sasuke. Sasuke could actually win. You know, he has a 50% chance of beating Naruto, whereas Zoro, even at the end of the series, man, I see it being like 40% for Zoro. Luffy's like that, man. You know, and I ain't dissing Zoro or any of that shit, y'all, but that's just what it is. And I know a lot of people who are subscribed to me like Zoro too. So, let me know what you think about that in the comments. But that's what's shown in the anime, and read the manga too, and that's what it is, man. Zoro, currently, if they were to fight, Luffy would probably win mid to high difficulty. On the other side of things, Naruto and Sasuke, that's always going to be an extreme diff fight. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and have a good day, because I'm trying to today. Be cool, Call on the corner.